man who's waking us up today. Look how handsome this young man. Wow. Wow. Now tell me that. Oh gosh, Allah's made him pretty for us, man. Wow. Come on, black.
I want you to understand, Somalia is ancient Puanit. It is that the land where the Kemites said that they went back to visit the gods. Right now, where we are blowing up, was where Kemites sailed up happy. Up happy. Puanit is the land where Hatshepsut sent an entire fleet of people to meet with her cousin, who was the ruler of Punt. Somalia today was Punt yesterday, the land of the gods. So when we're talking about what Somalia is, if I could have caught them brothers before they got on that ship and told them, instead of shooting their brothers, they would have kissed the ground. They went back to our holy land, what Dr. Richie King calls Kui land, the land of everything and all. Consciousness came about in this area. Because please, we have to know that Africa as we know it today exists today only through 1885 and what was known as the Berlin Conference. Prior to that, Africa wasn't the nations that we see today. Somalia was related to, Punt was related to Kush, as you can see with Hatshepsut, and the queen of Punt at the time. They were related, they were cousins. That whole area was related. And we have to see this. There was a relationship between the Monomotapa Empire of South Africa and other parts of Africa. So we have got to look at this as an all-inclusive, an all-encompassing, holistic experience. But let's go back now, because I just want to say that about Somalia. Because I want you to understand what they're doing in Mogadishu. That's the Holy Land.
Wow, my brother. So today, get the cobwebs out, brothers and sisters, because this man, he specializes in cleaning the eyesight. Yeah, getting those cobwebs out. So brothers and sisters, we got already Sister Yvonne saying broad features are beautiful. Sister Bernice says, wow, the brother is still handsome. Elaine says, pretty boy. Lord gosh. Oh my God, brother, they are praising you down there, my king. And how are you doing, my brother? How are you feeling?
My brother, I am doing excellent, more motivated, and I feel more positive towards today's presentation than I was when we spoke about an hour and a half ago.
Yes.
So I'm feeling much better. And I also want to bring greetings and great birthday wishes to our brother, Minister Louis Farrakhan, and for all that he represents and for all that he has done for us in carrying the torch. And there was something that he said, there's something that you said that I think is very important. And it goes back to the days of our minister, El Haj Malik El Shabazz, who will be celebrating his birthday next week. And that is that the strength of, and I'm talking about when I was growing up here in New York City.
Yeah.
The strength of the Nation of Islam came not only from its own members, it came because the Nation of Islam had a message for African people in general. And it didn't make a difference if you were a Christian or a Hebrew Israelite, or if you were a Rosicrucian or Buddhist. The message that Malcolm gave us through the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was a message for all Black people. It's something that we need to think about today. Malcolm often said that they don't attack you because you're a Christian or you're a Muslim.
Absolutely.
Or because you're a Jew, or because you're a Democrat or a Republican, or because you're a Buddhist. They attack you because you're Black.
Yes.
And so being Black, being African is what unites us.
Yes.
No matter if we're on this side of the pond or that side of the pond, if you are of African descent, we're family.
Teach.
And the message that needs to be given to us is universal in nature. Because everywhere I've gone, every place I've traveled, including Egypt, it's the same.
Yes.
The more melanated you are, the more people feel they have the right to disrespect you. And they feel legitimate by conducting themselves inappropriately.
Absolutely.
And it's something that we all have to realize and give praise, and of course the Prophet for me. When I heard this brother's music in 1975, it just turned my life around. My brother held up an album, said, "You ever heard of this brother before?" Natty Dread.
Natty Dread.
Hey, them belly full, but we hungry. Positive vibration.
Yes.
Natty Dread. Dread, yes. Natty Dread now. I listened to him, and I often said that he reminded me of a cross between Gil Scott-Heron and Malcolm X.
Yes.
The driving rhythm, the words to his music, Exodus. And the other thing that I'd like to say about Bob Marley is that the greatest concert I ever went to in my life, and I've been to a whole bunch of concerts in my life, the greatest concert I ever was in Washington, D.C. in the spring of 1978 when
wow.
Bob Nestor Marley opened up for the Isley Brothers.
Oh, wow.
The greatest concert. Bob Marley took it down. You know, and I gained a new respect for the Isley Brothers because, you know, as you promote and what you do, you always have to be careful who your opening act is.
Exactly.
Because your opening act could literally make people want to go home after them. So you better be coming on your A+ game. You better have confidence in your talent to let someone like Bob Marley open for you.
Yes, sir.
And Bob Marley ended the concert. And for those of you who know the song, know the music, he ended the concert in Washington, D.C. with Exodus.
Oh, gosh.
Movement of the people. And they exited the stage talking about set the captives free. Set the captives free. But all of a sudden, Brother Muhammad and the family that's listening, in the background, I heard this driving rhythm. And as Exodus was going off the stage, as Bob Marley was going off the stage, the Isley Brothers were coming on with this music that they had segued in, and the song they sang was Fight the Power.
Woo! Woo!
Fight the power. Brother, we had a church service that day. We all went to temple that day. So in thinking of who you honor, Brother Muhammad,
yes,
and thinking of all the greats that have come before us and those that are still with us today, we pay homage to whatever name we call the ancestors and the creator, be he, she, Allah, or God, or Yahweh, or simply he is who she is, be it I am who I am, or if you've read Spirituality Before Religion, you know that you are the creator having a human experience. So however you look at it, family,
come on, brother.
We are honored to be here with you today. And the ancestors and the creator have watched out over us because it seems like it's getting a little bit more quiet. And that, you know, we forebore. I'm glad that you didn't tell anybody about anything that was going on because here we are and we're going to move forward. My brother, I'm able to share my screen.
It's all yours now, brother. You can share your screen whenever you're ready, King.
Okay.
Brothers and sisters, Professor Kaba is ready.
You know, family, the great scholar from Senegal, Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop, told us that when someone wishes to oppress another people, this has nothing to do with culture. This just has to do with when you want to oppress people. There are three things he says that they will take from you. They'll take your history.
Teach.
They'll take your language.
Teach.
And they'll take your psychological factor.
Teach.
Psychological factor are what Dr. Leonard Jeffries calls your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. And then they will superimpose their history, their language, their values, interests, and principles over you. So that no matter what decision you make in your life, it will never be in your best interest because you're looking at the world through someone else's eyes. And so historically, we know what we have to do. We understand the history of it. We understand how it is that we have to study our history to understand who we are as a people. I don't discuss African history as it relates to supremacy and inferiority. I look at the concepts that we're dealing with and what it is that we're trying to do as primacy, not supremacy.
Yes. Yes.
Primacy.
Yes, sir.
And the reason why primacy becomes so important is because when you can go back in time and when you know your history, you know what Dr. Diop says, even a bad history is better than no history because at least you have a point of departure for your existence. As African people in the diaspora, we almost believe that our conception was 1492. We perceive our existence as being something that has come into existence as of who we are today, which is true. But when you step back in time, the further back you go, the further black you go, and the less Eurasian you have. We can take our history back to a time when African people were the only people on the planet with civilizations.
Teach.
We can do that. And we have evidence for that. We have evidence for that from the eastern corridor of Africa, which would be Kush and Kemet and Somalia, to West Africa, to South Africa. Because you see, we focus on Monomotapa, great, the beautiful temple that is in Zimbabwe. But we don't get into the fact that there are stone buildings like that across the breadth and width of Southern Africa. It's not just that. There's a whole bunch more. It's just like when we look at the pyramids of Giza. We don't know that there were over 80 pyramids. That where Giza is, where the Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure, Mir, we call them Mir, M-I-R, Miru, plural for pyramids. There were over 80 Mir in this area, and it was a walled-in city.
Woo!
Let me give you an example. I always give to New York, but let me give example for UK. Let's say that all of the buildings in London were torn down or through time, they just disappeared, and the only building that was standing was Big Ben. Thousands of years from now, people come and they look at Big Ben, and it is their perception that that's the only building that was there.
Teach, black man. Come on, break it down.
You see how many buildings you have in London?
Come on, soldier.
You see the businesses, and you see all of the different things that are in London today.
Teach.
But if 2,000 or 3,000 years from now, all the buildings, all the businesses, all the hospitals, all the schools didn't exist anymore, and the only thing that you had was this concept of the Big Ben, you would think that Big Ben was the only thing that was there, not realizing that that was an entire city.
Hey.
So when you're looking at the Mir or the pyramids of Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure and the three smaller pyramids, and there's nothing else around, what you don't realize that thousands of years ago, that was a city.
City.
That was walled in with businesses, schools, hospitals.
Teach.
See, when someone takes your history from you, you don't know who you are. And as it relates to your psychological factor, we understand values, interests, and principles. I understand there is no value for me to honor George Washington. He did not serve us any good. He didn't mean African people any good. How could he be of value to me? And how could I teach my children that he was a person of value? I would have to be out of my mind. in fact, I would have to be in a European mind to celebrate George Washington or the pedophile Thomas Jefferson, who in his late 40s was chasing after a black woman named Sally Hemings, who was 14 years old. And to hide his sin of the relationship he had with her, he brought her to France with him to hide his sin of his illicit relationship with this little girl. But hold on, family. Sally Hemings was a product of the illicit relationship that Thomas Jefferson's father-in-law had with an African woman on his plantation.
Come on.
So Thomas Jefferson, one of the presidents of the United States that everybody's so proud of, was married to his wife, but was having an illicit relationship with his wife's half-sister, who was black.
Wow.
Now you tell me I'm supposed to value that? I'm supposed to be interested in him? I am to hold him up as an example of American greatness?
But the professor, can I just for the listening audience as well, because everyone's just blowing it up. They're saying you're teaching us tonight, King. You're teaching, and can I just Englishify it, if there's such a word, in terms of like Churchill. What everything you're saying there is exactly applies to the English value system that they give us here. And so we always talk about the greatness of Winston Churchill, for example.
Yes,
but yet he had no value, no love. And the way he spoke about African people and the people of color was exactly the same way you're from. So it's not an American thing, as you just stated.
That's right.
The values, if you ain't got our history, they will give us their people and we worship their value system, which has done nothing for us. Brother, please teach us. Carry on.
And I thank you for that, brother, because here's the other thing. When I speak to my family, and I'm speaking to my family in a different country, I never assume the right to talk to you about you. I'll tell you about me, hoping that you can make a comparison, which you just did.
Absolutely, King.
Because I was sort of kind of, and you know, I pray for all those who join the ancestors, but you had a recent death there in UK of the husband of the Queen.
Yes, sir.
And with respect, I speak now.
Yes, sir.
But while the world mourned and spoke of his greatness, did he really do something for black people in UK?
Not an ounce, brother.
So then you have to ask yourself, in the face of what we're facing, why it is important that what Sheikh Anta Diop told us about history, language, and psychological factor. This is why it's important for us to be very clear and very open and respectful about what we're experiencing as a people. And so we understand the values, interests, and principles. And we understand how we can work that out. History is coming alive for us now. The scholars that are coming before us are teaching us information that we need to know. But my thing is language.
Teach.
How do we unite ourselves as a people in our language? Because not only do we speak multiple African languages and dialects, but we also speak a lot of European and Asian languages and dialects. And language is the doorway to culture. I'll give you an example. Growing up, and I'm sure that it's the same where you are also. The community that I grew up that was not English speaking was Spanish speaking. People from Puerto Rico, República Dominicana, Cuba, they spoke Spanish. And Spanish was the second language that I learned growing up. But before I learned Spanish, I would be in a home of one of my friends who family spoke Spanish, and everybody would start to laugh. And I would say to them, tell me what happened, because somebody told a joke. And they say, well, I can't tell you the joke in English. And I said, why not? They used to say, because it wouldn't be funny in English. And I never understood, how could a joke be funny in Spanish but not funny in English?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I would imagine it's the same for all other languages that we speak, because language is the doorway to the culture of the individual. I'll give you another example in Spanish and English. In English, we would say blue pen. The adjective precedes the noun. The adjective describes the noun. So if I had a whole bunch of pens on the table and they were all different colors, what was important to me was not so much that you know the pen, the noun, it's important that you know the color first.
Yes, sir.
Blue pen. In Spanish, it's the other way around. The noun precedes the adjective. Pluma azul. Pluma azul. Pluma is the pen, azul is blue. So in Spanish context, the noun precedes the adjective. Language is the doorway to culture. When someone can take your language from you, they take away your cultural common sense. And so what I wanted to speak to my family about today was the concept of the power of language. But more importantly than just knowing the power, what can we do about it in 2021? So I'd like to share my screen,
It's all
and
yours,
I'd like to do a PowerPoint.
All yours, Mike. And we can't wait, brother. We're loving it already.
Okay, can you see that?
It says starting share screen. Nothing's come up yet.
Can you see it?
It says still starting, brother.
Oh, okay, it's starting. So really what I'm looking at, and when it does come, what I'm saying is that the importance of language, here is my basic concept. Meduneter, or what we call hieroglyphics, should become the African world's classical symbolic language. Meduneter should be to us what Greek is to the Western world's languages.
Absolutely.
You know, Dr. Van Sertima told us that to truly be a language, you must have a script specific to that language. English, taking his definition of language, English is not a language. Spanish is not a language. French is not a language. Portuguese, not a language. German, not a language, because they all use Greek script.
Yes.
They're not languages. The whole time they're talking about how we speak dialect. They don't recognize they're not a language either.
Mm.
But when you write in the history books, you can say what you want to about yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So brother, if you can come off share screen, I mean, if you started your PowerPoint yet, because nothing's coming up still.
Well, I had started it. It looked fine For it looked the way it looks when I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, try again, brother.
Okay.
And you know when you click share screen, the green button, there's two buttons at the bottom as well. Before you share the screen, click on those as well.
Which one of those, brothers, when you say that?
Yeah,
Because I see share, I see participants, chat, share screen, record,
yeah.
raise
So
hand.
hit the green, hit the share screen now, and at the bottom, once you hit share screen, there's a another menu that comes that says share sound, optimize video.
Yes.
Yeah, if you click those two buttons, or maybe sometimes it's one, and then hit the PowerPoint that you want to open up. See if it starts. For some reason, yeah, nothing's coming up. And you've hit your PowerPoint, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Looks like, oh yes, sir, we've got it, brother. We've got it.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, brother. You're looking beautiful, and we can see your PowerPoint now.
Oh, fantastic. Good. I'm glad. I'm glad.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. No doubt. Thank you, brother, because you helped me, because I never had to do that before. So, hey, I'm learning, brother. I'm
Respect
schooling.
my king.
You schooling me, bro.
I'm always your student, brother. I'm always your student.
No. And so I of you, brother. The best teachers are the best students.
Yes, sir.
You know, the second point that I wanted to make, with Meduneta becoming the classical African symbolic language, but what language would we actually speak to each other around the world? And I'm recommending that we choose Kiswahili. Let me say all African languages are phenomenal. Yoruba, Igbo, Twi, they all have their value. But what I am saying is that Kiswahili, and we'll get into why Kiswahili is the language that could become the diasporian African language. We'll talk about it. This is taken from Civilizational Barbarism. It's chapter 14, How to Define Cultural Identity, pages 211 to 220. What Dr. Diop tells us about, remember we said history, language, and psychological. Well, here's the linguistic. The definition is, one can say that a people have left pre-language behind from the moment that it becomes conscious of the importance of the event to the point where it invents a technique, oral or written, for its transmission, communication from one person to another organic life form. In other words, the moment language comes into existence is when you have left the inability to express a concept or a sense, and you transfer or transmit, communicate that concept to another person. That happened in Africa. That began in Africa, when humans decided that they wanted to transmit to each other an idea or a concept. And that ushered in human consciousness. He goes on to talk about Montesquieu. As long as a conquered people has not lost its language, it can have hope. As long as a conquered people has not lost its language, it can have hope. And family, we have not lost our language. We just forgot it. I always make that stipulation. When you lose something, means you got to go out and find it. When you forgot something, all you got to do is remember. There's a big difference between the two. Language is a unique common denominator, and it is the characteristic of cultural identity for excellence. It is therefore a necessity that a common African language unify its people. And I am recommending Medunete as the classical symbolic language and Kiswahili as the practical spoken language. Let's look at Medu Neter, divine script, sacred script, an ancient African written language. Africans would quickly discover, to their great surprise, this is Dr. Diop, that it is a typically, and he used the word Negro African, so I don't take the liberty of changing his words. It is typically Negro African language that has been the oldest written language in the history of humanity. African linguistic research offers breathtaking possibilities to comparative linguistics. African cultural personality, cultural identity. It is, and this is Dr. Diop still speaking to us, it is through the study of the Egypto-Nubian languages that the historical dimension is introduced in African studies. Linguistic unity of Africans, cultural identity are historical linguistic factors as constituent elements of a cultural personality. This is what we're saying. Language creates your cultural identity. There in UK, in France, in Germany, in Holland, in the United States, in the Caribbean, in Central South America, all around the world, in Asia, the base of the African thought process comes through the language we speak, even if we're speaking a foreign language. In the United States, it's called Ebonics, ebony phonics. It's an African American linguistical communicative pattern. Inside the English that we speak, when Black folks say things like, I be going to the movies. Okay, now, what we do, and I am sure it is the same in UK, you have the same exact way of doing it, but you do it according to your perspective as it relates to the impact that your environment has on you. But here's what we do here in the United States. And we do it in French, we do it in Spanish, we do it in Portuguese, we do it in Dutch, we do it in Chinese. You have you ever heard an African person speaking Chinese before? It don't sound nothing like an Asian that speaks Chinese, because there's a flavor that the African adds to it that is not there within the context of the language itself. But here in the United States, we say, I've been going to the movies. Okay, we cut out a lot of different words that are unnecessary. See, African folk understand the value of time. They ain't wasting no time. But in English, we say, I go to the movies frequently. Black folks say, I don't need to go through all that. So here's how I say it. I be going to the movies. Then you have the concept, I go to the movies very frequently throughout the month. You added more words to the sentence to emphasize that you go to the movies a lot. What African folk do is that they put an intonation in their voice. To say that whole thing, they say the same thing, but they put an intone in the voice. They say, I be going to the movies. They put an emphasis on going to the movies, because that emphasis on going means to each and every one of us, wow, they go to the movies all the time. Now, if you go to the movies twice a day, you say, I go to the movies very frequently. In fact, I go twice a day. You've added more words. Black folk in America say, see, not only do they say it, but they put their body into it. They say, I'll be going to the movies. So now they've not only said it shorter, but they've intoned their voice to emphasize they go frequently, but then they use their body to describe the fact that it's more than just what you think. I go to the movies twice a day, but I'm not going to say it to you like that because I value your time. So I'm going to tell it to you like this. I be going to the movies. That is what Africans do to language. We come up underneath the language and we add our flavor to everything that we do. And what's interesting is everybody trying to copy us. That's the other thing. They just want to copy us. But if I were them, I'd want to copy us too, because I know we cool. Language necessary for a total recasting of the African program of education in all fields. In other words, the language that we speak to each other has to be the foundation for recasting our consciousness. So we've got to make this happen. We're not going to be able to come together with us speaking all the different languages in the world. And there is a radical centering on these Egypto-Nubian antiquity. So that what he's saying is that Medu Neter acts as a connection because they're symbols. These symbols are throughout the world. So it's not specific to any one area. You have owls in UK, in France, in Egypt, in America. We got owls. We've got different types of animals. Of course, they're plentiful in Africa, but we've got these animals all around the world. So the symbolism of Medu Neter allows us all to connect in a way that we couldn't before. Now, to my brother, I had a chance to work with this elder brother who is now an ancestor. It's a Congolese brother, Kimbwandende Bunseki Fukia. He wrote a book titled The African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo. Dr. Fukia, what a powerful, brilliant mind. He went down deep inside the original human being. In fact, he looked like an original human being. He was very short statured. He probably was maybe 4'11", maybe 5 feet, very slender in build. He was like Twa Mbuti people of the Ituri forest of Congo. In this book, I used his book when I taught African cosmologies in college. I used his book to describe the cosmology that he spoke about. In his introduction on page 9, Dr. Fukia says, Africans love the study of their languages if they wish to talk honestly about themselves and about what they are. For all systems, codes of their society are coded or tied in these languages. Language and culture are tied together. I told you that story about telling the joke in Spanish. Tied. Humor is tied to the language. It's tied to the culture of the language. And so how could we ever think we could talk to each other if there is not a unifying language that is a base for our cultural common sense? Language, the art of coding and decoding symbols. These languages should be studied and used as languages of instruction in order to prove their scientific capacity. To study language is the most important process of learning the art of coding and decoding social systems of human society in the world. Cultural common sense. Learning is an accumulative process of coding and decoding cultures. Therefore, it is necessary to study the language that expresses those cultures. It's the art of coding and decoding your culture. You are coding and decoding who you are. And if you're speaking someone else's language, how can you code and decode who you are? You are decoding and coding who they say you are, not who you are. So how will you ever know yourself if you are coding yourself according to someone else's estimation of who you are as a human being, particularly when they're calling you a slave? Tying equals coding equals synthesis, which means bringing together. Synthesis is to bring things together, to synthesize. Untying is decoding, which means an analysis. You are analyzing what it is that you're looking at. I'll give you an example. I take a test for a 5-year-old child, which would be our kindergarten class in the United States. It's the first grade that you go to in school, called kindergarten. You're 5 years old. The next grade is first grade. You're about 6 years old. Let's say that I take a test on the pyramids of Egypt, of Kemet, but I take the test in the German language. There's a very good chance I'm not going to do well. Is it because I don't know about the pyramids? Is it that I don't have the intelligence of a first grader? No. The problem is I can't decode German. Same letters. German, the language uses the same letters that English uses, but they're coded a different way. They're tied together differently. So if I took a test, I wouldn't do good. Not because I don't know, but because I cannot decode the German language. Well, imagine what happened to us as Africans when we were stolen from Africa, held in bondage against our will, and forced to be able to interact in a different language. We had to start decoding on many different levels because nobody was teaching us, because it was against the law to educate African people. So how did we learn to speak the language? How did we learn how to read? Can you imagine that great accomplishment, family? Can you imagine how great we really are to be able to learn something that was forbidden for us to learn, but we learned it anyway, and in many ways, we mastered it better than the people that originally spoke the language. We have to learn the art of tying or coding, synthesis, in order to understand the opposite side of that art, which is untying or decoding, which is analysis. Only one who understands the codes of their social and conceptual systems can decode them from the outside world. This is why in America and in the Caribbean, we created a language called Pig Latin, spoken so that the European couldn't understand what we were saying to each other. So not only did we learn English, but we learned how to take English and create a whole new coding system. And the way we did it was that we took off the first letter of the word, put it at the end, and put AY at the end. So if you're looking at coding, we would call that Odinke. Synthesis would be thesis sine or enthesis se. Analysis would be analysis A. We took the first letter off, or like if it was a word like spray, we would take we would say a spray. We would take the SPR off and say a spray. Put the SPR at the end of the word, add an AY. It's called Pig Latin. That's what we invented to talk amongst ourselves in the English language so that the European didn't even understand his language. And we called it Pig Latin for a reason, because guess who was the pig? Only one who understands the codes of their social and conceptual systems can decode them from the outside world. Dr. Fukia tells us a Congo proverb that states, a community's knots or codes are decoded by its members, which is cultural common sense. Codes are only decoded by their members because only their members know the code, because they were the ones that tied the words. The importance of interpreting languages. Africanists and all African wisdom lovers must be interested in the study of African languages in order to avoid yesterday's biased blunders. A systematic understanding of language is possible only if you can taste and feel the radiant beauty of the language that generates that culture. Think of what that means. A systematic understanding is possible only if you can taste and feel the radiant beauty of the language that generates that culture. To have pride in those words, to have pride in the ability to communicate. One has to agree that our present conceptual way of coding and decoding, tying and untying, social and systematic codes of alien cultures is the cause of insecurity and tensions in the world today. There is a television show that I watch, that we all probably watch. Some of us may watch. I'm a Trekkie. I've been watching Star Trek for a very long time.
Brother, don't let me start. Brother, you're teaching my language now, King.
Okay.
I'm a Trekkie too.
Okay, well, brother, you would like this book right here if you do. If you like, check this book out, Star Trek and Philosophy, The Wrath of Kant, Eberl and Decker, where they go deep inside some of the storylines of the Star Trek series.
Come on.
This particular chapter is from 3 to 17, from Shakespeare to Wittgenstein. It's called Darmak. Now, what's interesting about this in so many different ways, my brother Muhammad and family, the title of this particular episode of Star Trek Next Generation is called The Children of Tameri.
That's deep. That's deep.
This is the actual name of this. This is when Captain Picard. Okay, now, I want to just tell you the overall story. This episode deals with the fact, and Paul Winfield, an African-American actor, plays the lead role in this part. And the people on his spaceship come from an advanced civilization, at more advanced than Captain Picard and the Enterprise, the ship Enterprise. And what they do is that they beam Captain Picard down onto this planet, and this captain of his ship, played by the brother Paul Winfield, also comes down. And what happens is that there is a dialogue going back and forth between them. And the thing is that Paul Winfield, the brother, his cultural common sense, his mode of language uses metaphor. He doesn't speak literal. He speaks metaphor. Let me stick a pin here for a minute, tell you a story. I went here in the United States, I traveled out to Columbus, Ohio, and I did a presentation. And this was part of my presentation in terms of Medunetta, to understand Medunetta and what we have to do about understanding this symbolic language. And I showed the episode. It was about 40 minutes because I wanted people to get a sense of what was going on. So I played the actual video. And in fact, you could Google it. Star Trek, The Next Generation, and it's called The Children of Tameri. And there was a brother in the audience that was visually impaired. He was blind. And at the end of the presentation, the brother told me that he saw what I was talking about. He said, I see what you're saying, but he was blind. And he said, now I have the advantage in this room because I can perceive the imperceivable because I'm blind. And I picked up what happened in that episode. And this is the story. This group of Tamarians were misunderstood. Nobody could understand them because of the way they spoke. They spoke in metaphor. And here's what they said. Paul Winfield, the actor, I'm going to call him the Tamarian. He says, Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. Now that don't mean nothing to too many people. Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. And Captain Picard keeps trying to say, well, what does that mean? Everybody's trying to figure out what that means. But in the Tamarians' cultural common sense, they spoke in metaphor, and Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra was a mythological story of two great people coming together on the Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. Tanagra was an island, a small island in this big ocean. Darmok and Jalad were two leaders that came together, but there was a beast on the island that they had to fight together. But to do that, they had to be able to talk to each other. That was the mythology. But on this particular planet where Captain Picard and Paul Winfield, the Tamarian, are, there's a beast. And what the story is trying to say is that once Captain Picard began to think in the metaphor of the Tamarian, then they were able to defeat the beast. Unfortunately, the beast got a hold of the Tamarian and killed him. But the story was that that event occurred because that captain was willing to risk his life in order to be understood by the cosmic universe. In this essay, it talks about that. But that's what I'm saying about Medunetta. We have got to think like our ancestors. We have to get into the metaphor.
Yes, yes.
Of our ancestors.
Yes, my king.
What was an owl to Cushites? Because up here in New York, we don't see too many owls unless we go to the zoo. So what in our society is comparable to the owl in their society? Well, let me give you two concepts. Well, let's move on because I'm going to show you. Instead of telling you, I'm going to show you. Cultural context leads to meaning. We speak in many different languages and translate our thoughts into unfamiliar languages. What happens when we speak the same language, but the cultural metaphor is different? That's called figurative language. What do you have to do? You have to understand the context in which the language is being spoken, which gives you its meaning. Drama is set in the language of the audience, not the land in which the activity is taking place. When I speak of the Assyrian drama, I'm telling you the story in the English language or the English dialect. But the story itself is set in the language of the audience. If I were in Puerto Rico, I would be telling you the Assyrian drama in Spanish. If I was in Haiti, I'd be telling you the Assyrian drama in French. But the translation loses something if you don't understand the metaphor within the language of the Africans that first told that story. So Medu Netta must become our classical African language. Ludwig Wittgenstein, 1889 and 1951, he saw our main problem was the analysis of language. Not understanding language creates foundational problems in metaphysics. Because remember, we talked about pre-language before. Metaphysics is the physical before it got physical, the spiritual. But if you don't understand the language, which is what was created out of the spiritual, you ain't gonna understand the spiritual either. So you down on both cases. You don't understand the spiritual aspect of it, and you don't understand the physical aspect of it. So there is a failure to communicate. Every word has a meaning, and this meaning is correlated with the word. It is the object for which the word stands, or symbol.
Sir, I'm just going to cut in if you don't mind. I've had
Please.
a couple of people ask a couple of questions that I just want to clear up at this point. A few people asking about if you could please repeat the Star Trek episode that you mentioned or referenced.
Okay. It's called The Children of Tameri.
All right. That's that there.
And that's Star Trek The Next Generation. And it stars Paul Winfield, Winfield. It's on Google because I've Googled it. I've gone to YouTube. I've searched it. It's there. It's really a phenomenal episode. It's one of the best episodes that I saw in The Next Generation. Of course, the greatest series was Deep Space Nine with our brother Avery. But that's a whole nother story.
Yes,
I don't want to get Andrew quite up about Star Trek. We could totally just take over this whole thing with that. So I'm not going to ask too many questions about that. I'm just going to, there is a couple of questions here about, I mean, you spoke a little bit about our history and obviously how our history links to our language. I've had a couple of people ask about, you know, how that history now, or how that history is affecting the language that we have now. And I guess we've even had somebody ask about the ADOS movement and how American descendants of slavery, that kind of movement, and how that's impacting language. Don't know if that.
Well, the first question that you asked, please give it to me again, because I got caught up in that second question.
They were talking about the history of our old people and how that language. Sorry, let me get the question up and get that specific. So this question is from Sandra. Sandra says, we've got beautiful history, but did any of our people sell us out as to why we are in this position? I guess that's with our language, or I guess with where we are now in total.
When you said that, you said sell us out?
Yeah, that's what's written.
Well, I don't think African folk had a choice. They had to learn how to communicate. And because there were so many dialects, even if they went in and they stole many people from, let's say, Nigeria, let's even say Yoruba, each person could have spoken a different type of language. It would have been Yoruban, but it would have been developed around their environment. When they were stolen and brought to America, they had to learn how to communicate. And so the unifying language amongst Africa, I mean, do you know how many languages African people that were stolen from Africa brought here? You know how many languages we spoke when we came here? And we had to somehow communicate with each other. And so English was the language. When it was the Spaniards, it was Spanish that was the language. When it was the French, it was French. I don't think we sold each other out. I just think that we had to survive. In fact, I think what brought us together was English.
Can I just add as well to that, brother?
Please.
Because you know what, brother, I've got to say tonight it's just been phenomenal. I know we've not finished yet, but it's just been so brilliant. But also when we remember the scene from Roots, when they were one of the so-called slave ships on their way to the west, one of the problems that they had to overcome when it was in the hulls of the ships in Roots was that everyone spoke a different language, and they said, how can we revolt in unity and communicate across the ship at the same time? And so they had to devise, that's one of the first things they had to devise in terms of bringing that unity together. We had to, they stated in Roots that someone who spoke another language that was similar to the person beside them, communicate these words to them now. And so this, what you're saying here really goes into line in terms of you can't have a revolution unless we know how to communicate. Whether it's a revolution physical, or whether it's a revolution spiritual, whether it's a revolution spiritually, this language has got to be, there's got to be a unifying language, whether it's the language that we use on a daily basis, or as you just said before, our classical language, our language of study, but it's fundamentally vital.
That is what saved us. And in order for us to understand and go back to Medu Neter or Kiswahili, we have to master the language that we think in.
Absolutely.
So for us to be effective speakers of Kiswahili, we also have to be effective speakers. For us in English speaking, in the Anglophone, we have to master English. People who speak Spanish have to master Spanish, because how can you translate if you don't have a base of your thinking language? That's what I used to always ask my children in school. What language do you think in? And there are children that I had that thought in Spanish. And if you thought in Spanish, I had to be culturally familiar with the Spanish language to be able to communicate with you, because how could I make that transfer of thought? See, language becomes that vehicle that will unite us.
Absolutely, King. Fundamental.
I go to Brazil. Brothers and sisters speak Portuguese. I speak English. We should speak to each other in Kiswahili. If you take just a short ride across the water where you are and you go to Holland.
Absolutely.
Brothers and sisters speak Dutch. You speak English. You should be able to speak Kiswahili to each other. And I'm going to tell you why that is.
Teach us.
I'm going to give you the foundations of what I'm saying from a scientific perspective, not just an emotional perspective. And that's why I keep saying all African languages are beautiful. Learn Twi. Learn Yoruba. Learn Igbo. Learn whatever African language. But we have to have a practical, unifying African language that's based in science, and we're going to talk about that. Now, the second question, my sister, had to do with ADOS.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, yeah, it did. Sorry, I was on mute. So yeah, it was just a question about the ADOS movement in general, and I guess what you think of it, and if you think that that's having an impact on our language now.
Well, let me just say like this. I am ADOS. My father is from Alabama, which is in the South, and my mother is from Boston. I am an American descendant. I don't like slave, but that's what it means. I'd rather use the word of enslaved, because slave is a noun, enslaved is a process of becoming. Africans aren't slaves. They were enslaved. There's a difference. See, words are very important. Language is very important to me. You know, Africa, you know, like I heard teachers say in school, slaves were brought from Africa. No, slaves were not brought from Africa. human beings were stolen from Africa and enslaved in the American hemisphere. There's a difference.
Massive difference, brother. Massive.
So I don't like the word slave. I was never a slave. I was enslaved.
Teach on that.
And that becomes important. But now, let me tell you this about that concept. I will do anything to support my people, specifically African American people. But if you are an African anywhere in the world, you are my family. I think we should look out for each other. I think that Africans who are from the UK should look out for Africans from the UK. If you're from Puerto Rico, you should look out for Africans from Puerto Rico. But never lose sight of the fact that it is Pan-African or perish.
Absolutely.
When I went to London in 2009, when I went to Birmingham in 2018, I think that was the date when I went to Birmingham, I went home to my family. Not blood family, black family.
Absolutely.
I felt at home when I was with my peoples in UK. When I was in Holland, I was at home with my people. And I think that we have to come to understand certain things. I understand the concept of what Eidos is saying, but we have to go beyond that.
It's got to be, brother.
It's Pan-African or perish.
Absolutely.
Period. You can be proud of who you are. You can support your people and do what is necessary for your people. That's a good thing. But not at the detriment of your family. That's where I'm coming from. This is what I've told members of the organization Eidos. I've expressed my feelings, my respect, and my love for our people. African American people have gone through quite an experience here in the belly of the beast. I recognize that, and I respect that. And I will do whatever I can to help our people, but not at the detriment of my worldwide African family. I'll say it one more time. Pan-African or perish. I hope I answered that question.
Loud and clear, brother. Loud and clear.
You should be proud there in the UK of all the great people that have come through your culture in UK and its relationship with the Caribbean islands and the countries in Africa. And when you come upon a brother or sister from UK, there's something special that you know about each other. There's a cultural common sense that Africans from UK have. There's something that you know in the language that you speak and the thoughts, the foods that you eat, how you've taken the food that was put before you and just did something to it to make it a delicacy. Rice and peas. You know, the way you do it. Here in the United States, we have rice and peas. In Puerto Rico, they have arroz y habichuela, rice and beans. In Haiti, they have the same dish, but it all tastes a little different because of the cultural common sense. You know, when I was young, growing up in a project, we had families that was from Haiti. We had family from Puerto Rico. We had family from Jamaica. And once a month, all of us would just share our dishes. And my mother, African American, she would cook what we call kidney beans and rice and fried chicken. our Spanish neighbors, our Spanish speaking neighbors would cook our arroz con pollo, rice and chicken, con habichuela, with beans. And each of us, the children, would take a dish, and I would go to the neighbors and we would share one dish with everybody. And in turn, they would share a dish with us. Same food, chicken, rice, and beans. Same food, but from a cultural perspective, they had their own flavor. And never did we compete with each other. We just enjoyed each other's chicken, rice, and beans. And if we're going to move forward as a people, what the example I just gave you with food is what we have to do with ourselves. We have to share our culture with all of our brothers and sisters in the African diaspora and those at home in Africa. And it's not about competing about who's the best. It's about appreciating the differences within the African community worldwide. Pan-African or perish. And I understand that as people travel different places, we bring our own disrespect with us sometimes. And there are people that come from the diaspora to America and they disrespect their African American brothers and sisters. And there are African Americans that go abroad to other places and they bring their disrespect. But that disrespect isn't an African disrespect. That disrespect is a human disrespect, and that person has to grow. That person has a problem. But I am not going to judge the group because of the way that idiot is acting. And this is what we have to understand. People act the way they act not because of their culture. They act the way they act because they're human beings that are acting inappropriately. If you come to America and you can get a scholarship, I'm going to do everything I can to help you. I want every African, no matter where you are in the world, I want you to be able to take advantage of that. At the same time, I would like people to understand that every benefit that Europeans or anyone else comes to America for a better opportunity, that better opportunity was supplied to you by the blood, the sweat, the tears, and the very life of African peoples who we call African Americans. And this is the reality. When I go to UK, everything that I experience, every right that I have, every dignity that's given to me, every demand that's obeyed has come to me because of what the African British community, if we want to call us this, everything that I experienced when I went to UK was specifically because of what the African community in the UK did to break down the oppressive life of African people in UK. We all have to come to the table and understand this and respect each other. Pan-African or perish. We will not survive. We will either stand together or we're going to fall apart. That's why I'm here today with you.
Teach us.
I'm with family.
We're loving
my family.
Teach us. Continue the language, big brother, man, because this is food. This is food.
Okay.
You killed the game. Killed it.
Is there any other questions, my sister? That was a very important question because that's being asked a lot.
Absolutely. And you gave us the food for it, brother. Don't worry. You've answered it with 100%.
Fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. How are words used to articulate the world into things in the first place? Not how words correspond to things. You see, that is what's coding. You're coding your thoughts. You're creating your thoughts. Kepra atum, the organizing, creative word. Kepra was the winged dung beetle that in Shabaka's Stone, my third book, represented the process of becoming. The process of becoming. Tehuti is the nectar of knowledge and wisdom, speaking and writing the word. Learn to understand what objects and words signify. Words give a particular picture of the essence of language. Every word has a meaning. This meaning is correlated with a word. The object is what the word stands for. You know, just to let you know, I used to teach this to my first and second grade students who basically were about 6, 7, 8, or 9 years of age. This is exactly what I used to tell them. Learn to understand what object, and we would have objects in the room like a ball, a chair, a table, a lamp. Learn to understand what objects words signify. Because lamp is lamp, but putting the LAMP together as it relates to language is what that image that you have signifies. And I would go to the classroom and I would have children take objects. Maybe they might take their keys out. They might take whatever object they had in their pocket. And we would study that object. That's how I taught children who were 6 and 7 what I'm saying to you right now. Words give a particular picture of the essence of the language. A ball. I have a bulb. Here's a bulb. Okay, B-U-L-B, but B-U-L-B is a code. I'm coding what this is. This is an image. This is an object. But there's a word that describes that. And then from that word, there are letters and sounds that come from my mouth. So my brother, Investigator Muhammad, when the brother comes that is going to talk to you about the physics, you said earlier that in a couple of weeks, there's going to come a brother that's going to talk to the community.
Yes, he's one of our top scientists. Yes.
There we go. Okay. This is the kind of concept that we need to get into to begin to develop exactly what this language that we're going to put together is going to be for us. Every word has a meaning. Bulb, meaning bulb. If I wanted to turn on the light, like the reason why I got this bulb is because I put a brighter light here, and this is more like a cream color. So this is another concept would be in terms of coding. Well, what color is this bulb? This bulb is cream color. Okay. What is the voltage? The voltage is 60 watts. You see, we're creating a language that from now on, all I got to do is hold this up and everybody out there knows. Oh, that's a bulb. Cream. Okay. 60 watts. That's how we develop language, whether we realize it or not, from a child. This is what we have to do in our classrooms with our children. Got to break this down. And this meaning is correlated. Every word has a meaning. Bulb brings light. This meaning is correlated with a word. Bulb, light. The object is what the word stands for. The object, the bulb, is what the word stands for. Tehuti, the patron of knowledge and wisdom, the ibis bird, cousin to the stork, who brought, I don't know if this is the same type of story in UK, but here in the United States, it's the mythology is that the stork is the one that brings the baby to the mother.
Yes, yes.
And what's interesting is that Tahuti was the one that went to Aset to tell her she was with child. In Christianity, Tahuti was replaced by Gabriel. That's how deep it gets. That's what Tahuti represents, bringing life through knowledge and wisdom. Language articulates the world into things. St. Augustine, one of the fathers, this was a black man, by the way. St. Augustine said that the learning of a language is like a child who comes into a strange country and does not understand the language. He, she already had his own language, but not the language of the new country. Think of our ancestors that came from Africa with their language, who came into a strange land and did not understand the English language, the Spanish language, the Portuguese language. Holistic languages, the holistic approach of learning languages begins with larger units of significance out of which separate words are only gradually articulated. Children think big, they see big things, but then what we do is we start to fine tune their language. You see bulb, okay? Young children don't perceive what this is. They have no idea. I'm speaking about infants. You show them, they don't know what it is. But then you might say bulb, bulb, and the child will say bub, bub. They'll try to repeat what you're saying. But eventually, as you move through the process, you start to fine tune it like I did just earlier. You go from a bulb to its cream to its 60 watts in energy. So what you do is realize that language and life are inseparable. You can't separate the two, because this is what you're actually learning. This is what everything that you do, that's what you're right now, what you're doing as we go through this process, you're doing the same exact thing through your language, through your cultural common sense. You are interpreting what it is that I'm saying to you. And the closer that you and I are in sync with each other's thoughts, the better. And that's why it's important to have a practical language, because if someone keeps speaking Spanish and the other keeps speaking English, you're never going to get to know each other. Because one language says that the adjective is more important than the noun, and the other language says the noun is more important than the adjective. You're both right. When I said blue pen, in Spanish, it's pluma azul, same thing. It's just that your coding is different. And we have to get on code, black code. To imagine a language means to imagine a form of life. If black lions could speak. Now think about this. If lions could speak, we would not understand their point of reference. Remember the story I told you about the Next Generation and Picard and the captain, the Tamarian captain, trying to talk to each other. They didn't understand each other in the beginning because they didn't understand their point of reference, which was the metaphor. Humans and lions live different lives. Lions are driven by their olfactory, the sense of smell. So if lions could talk, they would have a rich vocabulary using concepts dealing with smell, because that's what their life is based on. They depend on their olfactory smelling for sustenance in their life. And so the words in their language would have a lot to do with smell, aroma. There's your black lion. Words are deeply rooted in culture.
Absolutely.
Words are deeply rooted in a people's distinctive culture, their specific culture and mythology, which shapes the categories in which they understand their world. Going back to the black lion, the lion's life is based on smell. It is an important sense that creates their imagery. And out of that comes their cultural common sense. Words are deeply rooted in a people's distinctive culture, their specific culture and mythology, which shapes the categories in which they understand their world. Lions understand their world as it relates to the sense of smell. The importance of cultural common sense. Reading a language is dependent on the reader's cultural common sense. Like I tell you, if I had a book on George Washington, my cultural common sense tells me something totally different than somebody who reveres him. Same thing with Thomas Jefferson. There are people that are fanatics about Thomas Jefferson, think he's the greatest man that ever lived. I see him as a pedophile. In their world, who love him, he's president. In my world, I'd have tossed him in prison for messing with a 14-year-old girl. The ability to read is contingent on developing vocabulary, and that vocabulary includes historical and cultural data that a particular society assumes as common knowledge among its members. Understanding general rules to understand must understand cultural content that supplies the context of the language itself. I be going to the movies. You have to understand that when I said I'd be going to the movies, don't tell me I'm speaking bad English. I'm speaking a perfect vernacular language. It's just that you don't understand my cultural common sense. I be going is a dramatic way of saying I do this constantly. I be saying all the time. We say I be because be, if you notice, the verb to be is one of the most used verbs, and the conjugation of to be many times comes in two forms. It comes in two forms in Spanish, estar and ser. In English, it comes in two forms. In French, it comes in two forms. To be is even deeply rooted in Shakespearean English, to the point where he said to be or not to be is the question. So when we speak it in the sense of who we are as a people, I be going to the movies. That's the verb that we use, because to be, I be going to the movies. But you got to understand my cultural common sense to understand that. If you don't understand my cultural common sense, you're going to tell me I'm speaking slave English. But you don't understand my vernacular. So it is you who are illiterate, not you in particular, but someone that would tell me that you're the one illiterate because you don't know my literacy. And you're assuming that yours is supreme over mine. Ability to read is contingent on developing vocabulary. That's why the first thing I do with children is vocabulary. The first thing I do in my books, vocabulary. How you going to understand what I'm saying if you don't know the context and meaning of the words I'm using? It's the first thing you should do. Start your vocabulary. When you're teaching reading to children, mathematics to children, all vocabulary words. If you're teaching addition, subtraction, define addition and subtraction, so the children know what they're doing. And then understanding general rules to understand, must understand cultural content. You're not going to understand the language. And that's the problem that we're having now. Even amongst ourselves, we don't understand it. Classical language and practical language. Medu Neter should become the African world's classical language of symbols, and Kiswahili should become the African world's practical spoken language. Medu Neter. Neter represents a spirit or sacred or divine, and Medu is writing, sacred script, Africa's classical language. Okay, let's talk, family. We all think that Greek is a language. Greek is not a language. Greek is another form of the African language that they learned from the Kush Kemet. This comes from a book written by Kwasi Milton. It's called The Art of Writing Hieroglyphics. To the left here, you see Coptic, the Coptic letters. Here you have the Greek letters. Here you have the name of the letter, alpha, beta, gamma, delta. Here you have the English sound of the letter. And here are the numbers that correspond to those letters. Just take a look at that for a moment. Look at the Coptic. Now, you know the Coptic come from Ethiopia. You know it then was brought into Egypt, and that then is what the Greeks got. But now let me show you something from Dr. Walter Williams' book titled The Historical Origins of Christianity. Look at that. You see Medu Neter? Medu Neter then became a script, and then it went into another script. Look at that letter there. That's where the letter A comes from. It comes from, and I'll show you, it comes from the symbol, the pictograph of the vulture. See here the owl? Here's the lion. You notice language had to come from Inner Africa because there's no lions in Egypt. The lions came from Kenya and Tanzania and Southern Africa. So to have a symbol in your language has to be referenced to your particular environment. Nobody gonna put a lion if you ain't got no lions in your environment. The lions that were put into Medu Neter to represent the letter L came from Inner Africa. Like
Common
Medu
sense.
Neter.
Common sense, brother. Teach. Common sense.
You see that? So look at the letter, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Medu Neter. See, we think English is a language. All the languages we're talking about, look at from the Greek, then that's what the Latin. That's where the Latin came from. So it came from Medu Neter to a hieratic and demotic. The Greeks picked it up, took it. The Romans learned it when they enslaved the Greeks. They made an uppercase and lowercase to differentiate the vowel and the consonant signs. But all letters. When you are writing in English, guess what? You write in an African language. Just look there. You'll see. Not making this up. This is science.
Science.
And science is knowledge. The patron is Tahuti. It's just right there. And I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to take you there. There is the letter for A. Her name is Mut. This comes from a book called A Hieroglyphics for Baby by Arma. Kwe Arma. Phenomenal brother, wrote the book 2000 Seasons. The letter A. Look at the script. Look where the A came from. The body forms the letter A. That's where the script came from. The A, look over here. The body comes down, the legs, there's the legs, and then there's that crossbar that comes across on the A. That looks like the letter A right there. That's where the letter came from. Now, what's wonderful is that they have followed the numbers here where you can actually draw, where children can learn how to draw the actual meduneter. A picture speaks 1,000 words. A symbol speaks 1,000 pictures. The symbols of meduneter open up the third eye, third ear, third nostril, and sensitizes the second tongue and the second skin. You see, we have a third eye. When mama said, you see what I'm talking about, boy? She's not talking about your two physical eyes. She's asking you your third eye. Do you see what I'm talking about? Okay. When grandma say, you heard what I say? She's not asking you about your two ears. She's asking you about your ear of comprehension. You have two tongues. You have the tongue where you taste the physical, and you have the tongue that tastes the spiritual.
Teach, brother, teach.
You also have two skins. You have the skin that you can feel, and then you have the skin when brothers say, you feel me? He's not talking about, do you feel me? Like feel physically. It's that spiritual feel. I'm with you. I got you. Here, the letter M. Why did the ancient African scholars choose the owl to represent the letter M? We've come with two possible reasons. An owl, and you know, the owl represents wiseness. You know, in graduations, you always have the owl, even wise potato chips. You have proverbs, wise as an owl. Believe it or not, the owl is not that smart. The owl is not the smartest bird, but the owl can turn its head 359 degrees, which means and represents to our ancestors that you could see all angles of things. They found that to represent intelligence. An owl can also see in the dark, which gave the impression that to be wise, you needed to be able to see the intelligence in the ignorance. You needed to understand the best in order to leave the rest. And so the owl came to represent wiseness, but also the sound of M. M is the only sound we make in talking where our mouth must be closed. Totally. Every other letter, somehow or other, your mouth is open. A, B, C, D, E, S, Z, mouth is open. N, open. But M, it must be closed. That's just the way it is.
And can I just add as well, my big brother?
Please, my brother.
The M also gives us that vibration of thought as well. Because when someone asks you a question, you ask a child a question or ask an adult a question, they say, they have that, it gives them that thinking vibration. So, you know, you find that a lot of times, or when someone's speaking fast, in order to think about the next word, they say a lot of ums, and that M has that vibration of thought power. So I'm hearing you, my king. I'm hearing you.
No doubt. And my brother, when something tastes good, what do you say? When you get a good idea, what do you say?
Come on,
Now,
my king.
what does that sound do? Now, in my book, Shabaka Stone, I have a chapter. It's called Shitite Int Fint. SHTYT, second word NT, third word FND. Shitite Int Fint, which means the sacred sacristy, the sacred chamber, Here's what that sound does. Mm, mm. What that sound does, and I have people practice this to make the sound. Mm, you'll feel a tickling in your head. And I ask people, locate that tickling where it is. That tickling is scientifically located just behind your olfactory bulb, the cause for smelling. And just behind that is where the Shittite infant is. When you make that sound, you vibrate that spot, that sacred spot. It vibrates. That spot that's vibrating is where all of your senses are unified. Your sight, your hearing, your smell, your feeling, your tasting, and your thinking, because thinking is a sense. It is your sixth sense. And I can show you that mathematically. But when you make that sound, that is why you have sounds like That's the power of the word mommy, mother. That's the sound of Muhammad, Muhammad. That is why when grandma upset, she go to the rocking chair, and what she do? She hums. Because that vibrates, and it brings her down to a level of consciousness where all of your senses are vibrating in a melanin-rich liquid that is complemented by your colostrum, that sacred oil, and your cerebrospinal fluid. That is why the owl represented the sound because it represented intelligence and wisdom. Not because the bird is intelligent, but because it can turn its head around to see all angles of things. And it can see wisdom in darkness.
Absolutely. Can I can I just add on that, brother? Because today it's just foreign knowledge on the on everyone, bro. But also in my studies, the represents the first frequency, the blackness, and an example of this in the English language. We're talking about language today. That's how you get the term umbrella. Is the shade of the umbrella, and so the represents the darkness, that thickness, that blackness. Also, that's where you get the term amber from, because it's that dark shade. Anytime even in the English, which we know go back through to the Greek and the Latin, that sound of not only did it represent wisdom and intelligence, but also represents the frequency of blackness, darkness.
Interesting. Absolutely. 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 Phenomenal, brother. This is us.
It's us, brother, bouncing, just bouncing, loving it, King.
That's it. The structure of the language was designed to evoke in those using it an understanding of functional consciousness. The word for the innermost recess is Shittite. Shittite is used to describe the deepest set sanctuary of the human temple. Its evocation remains hidden, secret, sacred, wise, moral, and intelligent. But what is sacred within the nasal passage? The letter name is based upon more than a fanciful physical resemblance for this chamber. M has a special significance in the spiritual event for perfection. This area corresponds to the sixth Hindu chakra. The chakra is not a specific anatomical piece or organ, but it is the site and seat of a complex set of activities that are simultaneously physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual. This area is connected to the sympathetic and vague nerves, and when resonated, particularly by the letter M, aum, Muhammad, etc., aids in achieving that desired state of consciousness. Their experience in Ain meditation consists of exhaling in a hum that vibrates this area. It is therefore not only physically hidden in secret, but like that sanctuary of a sacred temple. These resonating exercises prove current in various initiatic disciplines, but in Kemet, even the word used to describe the area reflected that knowledge. The fact that the pictograph of the owl demonstrates the script for the letter M. How many M's can you locate on the drawing of the owl? Look how many M's you have. Look at the M's, even up in the head. Look on the side of the wing. Okay. This is where the English script came from the Romans. The Romans got it from the Greeks got it from the Africans, and the original Africans had it in their pictograph of their Medu Neter. So why should Medu Neter become the classical symbolic language? Because it will draw us back to our most natural state.
Our original thought pattern. Come on.
That is it.
Come on, I'm with you, King.
The M's in the owl, look at them. That's where the script for the letter M came from. When we are writing English, when we are writing what we're writing, we are writing an African language. If you are Spanish and you are writing a Spanish language, you are writing an African script. If you're German, it's an African script. If it's Portuguese, it's an African script. I could take you to Asia and show you that even the Asian is an African script, but it's a different type of script because it's not based on the Roman or the Greek script, but it's still African. And what is in Asia is the same thing that's in Europe. It's the same exact thing. Africans laid the foundations for the linguistical patterns of our planet, and the teacher of this language was nature. Look at the letter K. There's the letter M again, because I'm getting somewhere with this. And here's the T. Kemet. K M T. All of it comes out of the pictograph. You can see the letter T's in, well, they call this a loaf of bread, but you can see the T's here in varying forms. Now, it's not going to be exact, so I'm not trying to get exact because over time things have changed. But when you look at the pattern, this becomes the top part of the T. When you go to the M, okay, we did the M's, and the K, you can see that even if you turn this around, this looks like the letter K as it relates to the pieces coming down here. When you look at these pieces here, you can see here's one piece, here's a piece that goes up, here's a piece that go down. Eventually, they work the script so that the K, the M, and the T, which basically means Kemet. But now, that ended the Medu Neter to become our classical symbolic language. Wow. Now let's get into why Kiswahili should become the practical spoken language that will unite the African world wide.
Brother, you're feeding them too much, brother. My God, this has just been too, brother, brilliant. Brilliant. All excuses are over now, bro. Another step in the language of knowledge.
You
Teach
see,
us,
brother,
King.
well, you see, brother Muhammad, why I felt that maybe all that noise would get in the way of what I want, because I wanted to get my message across today, brother.
You got it across, King. Believe me.
And I didn't want no drills to be competing with me. But fortunately, the ancestors and the creator shut them down, and here we are.
Can I just say before you start, brother?
Please,
brothers and sisters, please look, the brother, in truth, look how much time we've taken up of this brother's time, man. And he's giving this to us, man. Brothers and sisters, if you're feeling the love, if you're feeling the majesty, and if you're feeling the science of this brother's teaching, let us know in the chat room, man. We got to show respect, man. We got to show love, because this is master teaching you're seeing taking place tonight. Sorry, my king. Finish off, soldier.
Please. I
All
speak
yours, King.
Spanish. I go to Holland where Africans speak Dutch. We should be able to speak Kiswahili. I speak French. I go to London where Africans speak English. We should be able to speak Kiswahili. I speak Harlem English. I go to Brazil where Africans speak Portuguese. We should be able to speak Kiswahili. I speak Yoruban from Nigeria. I go to Ethiopia where Africans speak Amharic. We should be able to speak Kiswahili. I speak Twi from Ghana. I go to the Comoro Islands near Madagascar. We should be able to speak Kiswahili. Now, Kiswahili as a universal language. Why do I say it? The Kiswahili language is an ancient language. Its grammar, syntax, and vocabulary can go back over 7,000 years. Kiswahili is another reason, is the 7th largest language group in the world, spoken by over 60 million people. Another reason, Kiswahili has been recognized by the United Nations as an international language. And here's the key. Many Africans are already adopting Kiswahili as a unifying continental language, and an economic, transportation, and communication system can be built using Kiswahili throughout the continent as a unifying universal language. Kiswahili is taught. I studied Kiswahili in college, so it's taught in schools and universities around the world. Even when you go to that language program called Rosetta Stone, I've got the program in Kiswahili. Kiswahili has been infused in the African-American experience, even worldwide. Those of us in London that celebrate Kwanzaa, Kwanzaa is a Kiswahili word. Nguzo Saba is a Kiswahili word. Mishumaa, the candles, are Kiswahili. Umoja, kujichagulia. Ujima, ujamaa. Nia, kuumba.
Imani.
They're all Kiswahili words. We're already infused in Kiswahili.
Come on, big brother.
So I'm saying all the languages are beautiful. They all should be learned. But Kiswahili is a practical language that's already been implemented in our world. Let's go with that first for the brother and sister on the corner of 125th Street, or a brother or sister in London who may not know this knowledge per se. Suppose we open up our school. Come on, the school West Side?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. Okay. Teach Kiswahili to the young brothers and sisters.
Come on, my brother.
And teach them why.
Come
All
on.
the languages are beautiful. Kiswahili is right now the most practical. It's already amongst us. Kiswahili is the language used in Kwanzaa, which means the first fruits. The word Kiswahili. Kiswahili is the Swahili word for the language. Ki is a prefix attached to the noun. Swahili is the culture. Kiswahili is a language spoken by a subgroup of the Sabaki Bantu people. We're going to get deep now. The Sabaki Bantu. Kiswahili is part of a larger language group called Sabaki Bantu. Kiswahili is spoken by millions of Africans in Somalia, Kenya, Tanganyika, Mozambique, and as far away as the Comoro Islands. The Comoro Islands are located in the Mozambique Channel, northwest of Madagascar and facing Mozambique. Let me show it to you geographically now so you can see it. This is the east coast of Africa. Here you got Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania, Malawi, Mozambique. Here are the Comoro Islands. And here is Madagascar. Here, I put down here a close-up of these three islands right here. Okay? This is a close-up of this area right here. All these areas speak Kiswahili. And by the way, this is also part of the area where the original human family came from.
Come on.
Kiswahili is related to the Niger-Congo languages. The Niger-Congo languages are the world's largest language family and Africa's largest in terms of geographical area, number of speakers, and number of distinct languages. Kiswahili is generally considered to be the world's largest language family in terms of distinct languages, the Niger-Congo languages. Niger-Congo languages is the third largest language family in the world by the number of native speakers, comprising around 700 million people. The most widely spoken Niger-Congo languages by number of native speakers are Yoruba, West Africa, Igbo, Fula, Kiswahili, and Shona. And amongst them, the most widely spoken by total number of speakers is Kiswahili. Why should Kiswahili be the practical language? Because it is the most widely spoken African language in the world. Let's start where we are and build from there. Here is a map of the Niger-Congo cultural groups. This is where life came from, right in the middle, in Congo, Southern Africa. Just want you to take a look at that. That's how many people speak a Niger-Congo language through a Niger-Congo culture. And out of that, the largest group of speakers is Kiswahili. Language speaks meaning to cultural common sense. All indigenous languages should be learned and taught. All languages are expressions of that particular culture. However, a universal language is a deeply rooted language that has the ability to unite people worldwide. That is what Kiswahili can do for us. Classical language and practical language. Let's end it here. Medunera should become the African world's classical symbolic language, and Kiswahili should become the African world's spoken language.
Woo!
Yep, fam.
Brothers and sisters, what is this world coming to? If you brothers, you don't understand what it means to be alive right now. We know the prophets of old wished and prayed that they could sit down and listen to this wisdom. Brothers and sisters, I know we love him. We all know we love, but I want you to make sure you know he knows that we know that he knows that we love him. Come on, big brothers. Come on, my queens. Show the love, man. Now, brother, before you go, we've still got nearly 450 of us still on the platform, brother. Brother, before you go, please answer this question. How would you, because we had a discussion and we spoke about languages, brother, and you tore the place down. But one of the brothers, not on the platform tonight, this is previous to the show, when he heard that you was going to mention about Kiswahili being our language, our universal language in terms of communication on a daily basis, he said to me, with no disrespect, brother, no disrespect, it's a very good-natured question. He said, Andrew, wasn't Swahili given to us by the Arabs who came to enslave us? Now, I know I could answer him one way, but if that question was asked to you, brother, because that is a very good question, I know how I would answer that, brother. But brother, please Show us your majesty tonight. How would you answer that question, brother?
The base of Kiswahili is the original language spoken in the world by the Twa and Mbuti people. The grammar, the syntax, and the cultural common sense. Now, let me stick a pin there for a minute and let me come back. If you were to go to Tanzania and you would want to get a sandwich, do you know the Kiswahili word for sandwich?
No,
It's
sir.
sandwich.
Love
Because
that.
sandwiches are not indigenous to Tanzania. Same thing in Puerto Rico. If you go to Puerto Rico and you want a let's say a ham and cheese sandwich, okay, I'm just going to use that. A ham and cheese sandwich. You would ask for a jamón y queso sandwich, because sandwiches, the word is not indigenous to Puerto Rico or to Tanganyika or Tanzania. So when something is introduced into a culture, the word itself is put in, like the word amen. Amen is not a Latin word. Amen is a Cush Kemetic word, which means the hidden force of the creator, the invisible force of the creator. But when Romans were developing their religion, the Roman Catholic Church, they took that word out of the African vocabulary and put it at the end of their prayers and said it means it be so. It can't be. So be it. Amen cannot mean so be it, because so be it is a sentence. It be so. Subject, verb, adverb. It be so. So it can't mean so be it. It means the hidden one from Africa. Same thing with the word atum. Atum means the self-created one. Atom, given its name by Democritus, so-called Greek, meant indivisible, until they found out that you could divide the atom into smaller entities. So to go back to the question, the foundations of Kiswahili are African.
Absolutely.
Your Indo-Europeans, who we call Afrabs, because to be an Arab, you got to be black. So you got to
That's
be
one
Afro.
of the points I was going to make, brother. The original Arabs.
That's what makes you what you are.
Absolutely.
You're Semitic. You're Semitic, which means mixture. But it really doesn't even mean mixture, because Semitic relates to a language. It does not relate to a people. You could not be a Semitic person. The language you speak is Semitic. Semi meaning mixture. Just like the Native Americans in Florida, known as the Seminole, they were black.
Absolutely.
Semi means mixture. So let me go back to the question at hand. Kiswahili, because of the centralness of its presence, has borrowed from many different languages. And the language we call Arabic is one of them.
Absolutely.
But hold on one moment, because now you got to figure out, where did Arabic come from?
Come on.
Arabic came from the mountains of Ethiopia.
Come on, brother.
With Bilal.
Come on.
Who brought the language with him, brought this down. And if you don't believe me, research a brother named Antara, Antara. Antara was the brother, the black man, that gave the Arabic language its syntax and grammar, because he was a poet. Most languages are formed by poets and writers. When you think of the Russian language, it was formulated by black people. Pushkin was a poet. He gave Russia. If it wasn't for Alexander Pushkin, Putin would be speaking French today.
Absolutely.
Because Russia was part of the Gaul Empire.
Absolutely.
And they spoke French. Pushkin came in, and he was a poet, and he began to shape a language that became what we today call Russian. Antara did that to Arabic.
Absolutely.
So even if people wanted to say that Kiswahili borrowed heavily from Arabic, you still in the black.
Still, that's what I'm trying to say, brother. It's still us. There is
It's
no,
still- family.
we just don't understand that.
Hey, man, people always say to me, every time you talk, man, everything you say, man, it's like Africa did everything. And I say, you know something? Yeah, we did.
That's the reality.
I'm not going to apologize or be ashamed of that. We did. We laid the groundwork. I'm not talking about supremacy. I'm talking about primacy.
Absolutely.
We were the first.
Simple. Simple.
Science.
Simple.
Don't get emotional.
Simple.
And I tell them all the time, don't hate us because we beautiful.
Simple.
You just hating.
Simple. Love
That's
you.
the way it is.
As you said earlier, the further back, the further black.
That's
said it earlier.
And that is it, brother. And please know, I take you back to propel you forward.
Come on, my king.
I ain't taking you back here to stay back here like a slingshot. When you have a slingshot, you put a projectile in the sling, and the further back you go, the further in the front you can propel yourself.
Come on.
So let me take your mind and put it in the sling. Let me pull it back.
Pull it back.
The further back I go, the further into the future I'm going to propel you.
Gives you more power to go forward.
That's it. I ain't taking you back to stay here. You ain't never seen nobody sling back like this, just hold it like this.
Hell no.
They let it go.
Let it go, man.
And then they go forward.
Teach.
Then they go forward.
Brothers and sisters, this is the master teacher, Professor Kaba, all the way from New York City with us today. I can see we got Ghana in the house, Trinidad still in the house, Canada's still in the house, Washington's still in the house. Yeah. I can see you all, brothers and sisters. Show the love and the light to our King Teacher. Brother, we thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to end off with, brother?
My brothers and my sisters, my brother, Investigator, and to the family, I want to thank you for your support of my books that I've written. UK has shown really nice in support. I don't write because I'm a writer. I write because I have something to say. As I have matured, and for those younger brothers and sisters that are in-house, if you can understand this, you're going to get a key in life. The most valuable thing you have is your time. You can always make more money. You can always get a new house, as many sneakers as you want if you lose them. But you will never have another May 10th, 2021 again. And so how you spent your time is how you value your greatest possession. And so I thank you for coming on board here to be with us. And I thank you for your support. My 3 books that I have is at the very base. If somebody were to say to me, what is the main message you'd like to give our people? I would say, know who Professor William Leo Hansberry is. That's my first book. I would say, understand that spirituality existed before religions, and spirituality is unseen science, and science is seen spirituality. And if you want to understand where all the holy books came from, Shabak's stone will show you where all of the holy books came from. And it'll do it in a way that you can embrace yourself as a person, be proud of who you are, to celebrate your greatness, and to understand that you are the creator having a human experience. And while we're here, my brother Philippe Matthews, who was with you last week, I'm sure he told you this, but come to Shock Metaphysics and join the Kemetic Wisdom School. Because if you enjoyed this class, There's many more like this, not just from me, but from people like Dr. Leonard Jeffries. There are people doing programs like Sister Nicola Hurst, who is a counselor. So I encourage you, and put Shock, SHOCK, in the slot, and the monthly class will be half price, $14.98.
Brothers and
That is
sisters,
a price beyond control. You're not going to get what you're going to get at the Shock Metaphysics Comedic Wisdom School for $14.98 any place else but there. It is very powerful. And then finally, go to my website, family, www.kabakamene.com, KABAKAMENE.com. Go there and download my free e-course and my free study guide. And to my family from all around the world, let me say this again. It's about Pan-African or perish. It is about Africans at home and abroad. And that we should protect each other, support each other, make sure we are doing for each other. But never forget, we all are going to return back one day to Africa, no matter what. That is our home. And wherever Africans are, Africa is. And wherever Africa is, I'm at home with my family. So, Brother Muhammad, thank you so much for this opportunity. And to all those involved, to all of those who came on board, I thank you so much for your time. I value it. I promise you I will never waste it. And I promise that I will never let anyone waste mine. Hotep family.
Hotep, brothers and sisters, we've had a master teacher on teaching us. Please, 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 again, I can see the chat room. I can see all the love in the chat room. And I pray the brother does see it before he goes. Brothers and sisters, he gave us some marching orders. For those of you that are on my mail out list, I will put the links for Brother Professor Kaba and the school wisdom that he just spoke about, how to connect. If you're looking for any of the products, I will send you a link on my mail out for the whole week. I will send you those links. So don't worry if it's not in the chat room. I will personally send it out to you. Also, brothers and sisters, for those of you who are on my WhatsApp groups and Telegram groups, I will put the information there too. So as long as you're in contact with the investigator via my email, my mail out list, and or my WhatsApp or Telegram group, I will make sure you get that information. I will repeat, my number is 07863 543 785. That's 07863 543 785. If you want that information, I will be sending it out tomorrow on all of my groups. And we make sure we get the link so you can get all of his products, his teachings, and to join the school too. Brothers and sisters, wow, what a night. We can't thank our master teacher enough. I did warn you, brothers and sisters, he's a surgeon when it comes to removing the cobwebs from our eyes so that we can see the truth. You've just witnessed a master teacher. How do we know we've just seen a master teacher? Because a good teacher, a master teacher, makes complicated science seem simple and exciting. And this is what the brother's done. He went into some deep, deep, deep metaphysical language, but yet he held us and he made it so simple that we can understand it. And not only understand it, we are inspired. That's the only way you can keep 400 to 500 people on the platform, even though we went over time. That's the only way you could do it, because you are surgical in how you move. So once again, we thank our brother. Don't forget, brothers and sisters, on Sunday, the Hidden Truth carries on. As brother said, he's a Trekkie. I'm a Trekkie too. A lot of my teachings come from movies, films. I understand that in every work of fiction, there's always a degree of symbolic reality. I say that one more time. In every work of fiction, there's a degree of symbolic reality, because all fiction came from someone's mind who's based in a real world. And so you can't hide it. So brothers and sisters, we're going to go into the symbolism of the Omen Hidden Truth on Sunday. And don't forget, we've got the Rice and Peace show, your little brother Andrew Muhammad with Ace Got Talk. And that's going to be an hour prior to the Omen breakdown. And don't forget, next week, brothers and sisters, following Professor Kaba, we have our own legend here in the UK. Due to public demand, Paulo Bina returns with the corral concept. How do we break the psychological enslavement program? Remember what Professor Kaba says? We are not slaves, but we have been enslaved. And the original slaves were the Europeans. Let's not forget that, brothers and sisters. They were the Slavs, the slaves. But yet today, they will not refer to themselves as being slaves. Nor should we. We were enslaved. But now we're going to break through the psychological barriers, brothers and sisters. So that's going to be next week, same place, same time. And I end with the great words of our beautiful brother. I love Reverend Shock. You got to understand that, brothers and sisters. I love his heart. I love his humility. And that's why I can use this brother to end off and begin all of my shows now. I am one with first frequency. I am one with first thought idea. I am one with the firstborn people. I am one with the only one, Ashe. So brothers and sisters, again, show your love, support this platform. Yeah, we got our own school that we run for this platform. So every time you come into this platform, you help us change lives today. And don't forget, support Black businesses. We shouldn't have to say that to you every week, but we still have to say that to you every week. Support your own, fall in love with your own. Big shout out to Brother Tarun, the breathless guru, and he's going to be back on the platform again. Thank you to Sister China. Thank you